Some people spend their whole lives believing that if you love someone enough, they'll love you back the same way. I used to be one of those people. Then one afternoon in the middle of July, my son stood in front of 100 guests and made it perfectly clear where I ranked in his life. Not with words, with a check. My name is Harold Mercer. I'm 64 years old and I've spent the better part of 4 decades building something from nothing in Dayton, Ohio. A plumbing and HVAC company that started with 1 truck, 1 toolbox, and 2 hands that never stopped working. I raised my son alone after my wife Linda passed from a stroke 11 years ago. He was 24 then, old enough to grieve, but young enough to still need his father. I was there. Every single time he needed me, I was there. I never imagined I'd spend a milestone birthday feeling like a guest at my own celebration. Before we go any further, make sure you subscribe to Fathers Still Revenge and hit the notification bell. We share true stories like this every day, stories about dignity, about what happens when good people finally stop accepting the unacceptable. Drop a like and tell me in the comments where in America you're watching from. Your support keeps these stories alive. The party was my son's idea. He'd been planning it for weeks, he told me. A big backyard celebration for my 64th birthday, catered, with a live acoustic guitarist, the whole neighborhood invited, his in-laws flying in from Phoenix. He said it the way a man says something he's proud of, chest forward, voice bright. Dad, you deserve this. I wanted to do something big for you. I believed him. I drove to his house in Centerville that Saturday afternoon in my good shirt, the blue one Linda had bought me at Dillard's the Christmas before she died. I still wore it on important occasions. Old habit. I stopped at the bakery on Wilmington Pike and picked up a German chocolate cake, his favorite since he was 7 years old. Mrs. Harmon behind the counter had been making cakes in that shop for 30 years. She wrapped the box with a yellow ribbon and told me I looked like a man who had something to celebrate. If only she'd known the full picture. The house was already full when I arrived around 2 in the afternoon. Music floated over the wooden fence, and I could hear laughter and the clink of glasses. My son met me at the gate, and the look on his face was warm enough that I let myself relax. Come on, Dad. Everyone's here. You're going to love this. I stepped through the gate and stopped. Standing at the center of the yard, beneath a white tent strung with Edison lights, was a brand new, zero-turn riding mower. One of those commercial-grade machines with the polished red deck and the cushioned seat, the kind they advertised during football games for $5,000 or $6,000. It was wrapped in an enormous silver bow. My son walked straight past me toward his father-in-law, Dennis Albright, a retired commercial real estate developer from Scottsdale, who had more money than most small counties. My son put his hand on Dennis's shoulder and announced to the whole yard that Dennis had always treated him like a son, that he'd learned more about success and self-confidence from Dennis in 5 years than from anyone else in his life. Then he handed Dennis an envelope. Inside, someone told me later, was a check for $5,000 toward a new putting green Dennis had been wanting for his backyard. The crowd applauded. My daughter-in-law recorded everything on her phone. I stood near the fence holding a bakery box with a yellow ribbon on it. My son came back to me eventually, maybe 10 minutes later, after the photographs were finished and Dennis had shaken hands with half the yard. He was smiling that wide, distracted smile, the one that means his attention is already somewhere else. He reached into the pocket of his linen shirt and produced a small gift bag with tissue paper sticking out the top. "Happy birthday, Dad. We thought you'd get a kick out of this." Inside the bag was a coffee mug, printed with the words "World's Okayest Dad" in blocky orange letters, and a package of off-brand instant coffee packets that I recognized from the clearance shelf at CVS. The price sticker was still on the back of the mug, $12.99. I looked at that mug and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not anger, not yet, something colder, the slow, specific understanding that I had been fooling myself for years. "Thanks, son," I said. My voice came out even. Practical. He was already turning back toward Dennis. Nobody asked what I'd received. Nobody noticed the tissue paper or the price tag or the fact that I'd set the bakery box down on a folding table and hadn't touched it since. The party continued around me for 3 more hours. I sat in a lawn chair near the hydrangeas and watched my son refill Dennis's glass, laugh at Dennis's stories, pose for photos with Dennis beside the riding mower. My daughter-in-law posted the pictures in real time with captions about what a devoted husband she had married. The comments filled up with heart emojis. The only person who came to sit beside me was my 12-year-old granddaughter, Lily. She appeared at my elbow with a plate of food and set it carefully in my lap without saying anything. After a moment she asked, "Grandpa, did you get a good present?" I showed her the mug. She studied it with the honest eyes children have before the world teaches them to be diplomatic. That's it, sweetheart." She looked across the yard at the riding mower, still gleaming under the tent. "But the mower cost so much. Dad told Mom it was more than their car payment for 3 months. She said a thing like that shouldn't even be a question." I reached over and squeezed her shoulder. "Some lessons take people a long time to learn," I told her. Lily looked at me the way 12-year-olds look at you when they know more than they're supposed to. "Grandpa, you always said the size of a gift tells you how big someone thinks you are in their life." I had said that. I'd said it to her during one of our Sunday afternoons when I'd taken her fishing at Eastwood Lake, and we talked about everything and nothing the way grandfathers and granddaughters do. I hadn't expected my own lesson to come back around and hit me square in the chest. I left the party at 5 o'clock. My son gave me a one-armed hug near the gate, the kind that means I'm busy but I'm being polite. "Thanks for coming, Dad. We'll do dinner soon." I drove home to my house on Ridgeway Road, the same house where I'd raised my son, where Linda had planted the rose bushes along the front walk that still bloomed every June. I sat in the kitchen for a long time with that mug on the table in front of me. Then I got up and went to the filing cabinet in the back room. Linda had been the one who insisted on keeping records. Every receipt, every document, every statement in its own labeled folder. After she passed, I kept the system going because it made me feel close to her. That night, I pulled out the folder marked with my son's name and spread everything across the kitchen table. I sat with those papers until almost 1 in the morning. The private high school tuition, $12,000 a year for 4 years, $48,000. The state university, $15,000 a year for 5 years, because he'd switched his major halfway through, $75,000. The wedding to my daughter-in-law 3 years ago, I'd written a check for $28,000 because they'd wanted something large and neither of them had the savings for it. The down payment on the house in Centerville, $65,000. The truck I'd co-signed for and eventually paid off when he had a rough stretch between jobs, $19,000. The investment in the landscaping business he'd started 2 years ago with Dennis Albright's blessing and my money, $40,000. That business had been quietly dissolved 8 months later with nothing to show for it. The monthly help, $1,200 here, $2,000 there. Every time something came up that his income couldn't cover, I added those up 3 times, roughly $80,000 over 6 years. The total, when I finally wrote it down, was $355,000. I stared at that number until it stopped looking like numbers and started looking like years. My years. Weekends, I'd worked instead of resting. Vacations, I'd skipped. The kitchen renovation Linda had wanted that I'd postponed and then never gotten around to after she passed because the money kept flowing toward our son's life instead. $355,000 and a $12.99 coffee mug. Something shifted in me that night. Not dramatically, not with any noise. Just a quiet, final click. The way a lock sounds when it actually catches. I was done. I called my attorney Monday morning. Ray Kowalski had handled my business and estate affairs for 18 years. He's the kind of lawyer who never wastes a word, which I've always appreciated. He told me to come in that afternoon and to bring everything I had. I laid it all out on his conference table. The financial records, the gift comparison, the dissolved business investment. Ray listened with his hands folded and his reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. When I finished, he said, "Harold, what do you want to accomplish?" "2 things, I said. "First, I want him removed from my business entirely. Second, I want to change my will." Ray nodded slowly. 3 years ago, I had made my son a 35% partner in Mercer Plumbing and HVAC. The company I'd built from a single truck into a 12-employee operation with contracts across Montgomery County was now worth, according to the last valuation, approximately $1.8 million. My son held 35% of that. He'd done almost nothing to earn it. He came to the office 2 or 3 days a week, used the company truck for personal errands, and once expensed a weekend at an inn in Yellow Springs as a business development trip. I'd let all of it go because he was my son. Ray explained my options clearly. As majority owner, I had full legal authority to trigger a buyout of his shares at fair market value. His 35% was worth roughly $630,000. However, Ray said carefully, given that I could document unauthorized personal use of company resources over an extended period, I had grounds to reduce that figure. I don't want to be unfair, I told him. I want him to understand that actions have a price. Not to punish him, but to be clear. Ray recommended an offer of $400,000, a fair number that reflected the share's value while accounting for years of taking more than he was entitled to. My son could accept it or challenge it, and likely receive less through litigation. I approved it. Then we worked on the will. My current estate, including the house, investment accounts, savings, and my 70% of the business totaled approximately $2.4 million. My son was set to inherit everything. I had written it that way because I had assumed, for years, that he understood what that meant and what it required of him in return. I want to leave him exactly what he spent on Dennis's birthday present, I said. Ray looked at me over his glasses. $5,000. $5,000. $5,000. The rest goes to Lily in a trust she accesses at 25 and to the Dayton Children's Hospital in Linda's name. My nephew Paul, who had been working as my operations manager for 11 years and who had never once taken a single thing he hadn't earned, would receive my share of the business. Ray was quiet for a moment. Harold, once this is executed and the no contest clause is in place, there's very little room to walk it back. I know, I said. That's the point. We signed everything that afternoon with 2 witnesses. I walked out of that office feeling like a man who had put down something very heavy after carrying it for a very long time. Tuesday morning, I went to my bank. 5th, 3rd on Far Hills Avenue, where I'd kept accounts for 27 years. The branch manager, a steady woman named Gloria Simmons, handled everything without a single unnecessary question when I explained that my son needed to be removed from all joint accounts and that his signing authority on the business line of credit needed to be revoked immediately. Within 90 minutes, his access to $212,000 in combined accounts and credit was gone. Quietly, cleanly, without a single phone call warning him. That evening I drove to the shop and found Paul in the equipment bay doing inventory. Paul was 38, solid, the kind of man who shows up early and stays late and never asks for recognition because the work itself is enough for him. He had Linda's eyes, her brother's son, and he'd come to work for me 6 years ago when his own construction job had dried up. He'd earned every promotion, every raise, every responsibility I'd given him. I told him everything, the birthday party, the mug, the financial records, the decisions I'd made. Paul listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I've always respected about him. When I finished, he said quietly, "Uncle Harold, I knew something was off, but I didn't know it was this bad. I'm sorry." I asked him if he wanted to run the company when the time came. He looked at me for a long moment like he was making sure I was serious. Then he said yes, and I believed him, and that was enough. Everything was in place. My son's world had already begun collapsing around him. He just didn't know it yet. The moment of discovery came 9 days after the birthday party, on a Monday afternoon, when my son tried to use the company card at a client dinner downtown. The card was declined at table 33 on East 5th Street, in front of the client and 2 subcontractors he'd been trying to impress. He tried it 3 times. The server handled it with professional discretion, but the message was clear. My son paid out of his personal account, excused himself from the table, and spent the rest of the evening making increasingly frantic calls to the bookkeeper, to the bank, and finally to me. I didn't answer. Between 4:15 that Monday afternoon and midnight, my son called me 37 times. I listened to the voicemails in order, once, sitting in my living room with the lights low. The first one was casual, almost businesslike. "Hey Dad, give me a call when you get a chance." Some issue with the card, probably just an error. The fifth one, around 6, had an edge in it. "Dad, seriously, the bank is saying my access has been changed. That can't be right." The 12th, just before 8, had moved past confusion into something that sounded like fear. "Dad, what is going on?" "Jennifer is freaking out. Did you change the accounts? Call me back right now." The 22nd, around 10:30, was quieter and more careful. "Dad, I know you were hurt at the birthday party. I know the gift was wrong. I know that. But this isn't the way to handle it. We're family. We need to talk about this like adults." The last one, at 11:52, was just my son's voice stripped of every pretense. "Dad, please. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. Just please call me back." I sat in the dark for a long time after that last message. Then I looked at the mug sitting on the kitchen counter where I'd placed it as a reminder. $12.99. And I did not call back. He showed up at the shop Wednesday morning at 7:15, before most of the crew had arrived. Paul texted me immediately. I got there at 8. My son was in my office, sitting across from my desk in the chair where suppliers and job foremen sat when we had difficult conversations. He hadn't slept, his shirt was wrinkled and his jaw was tight, and when he saw me walk through the door, he stood up so fast the chair scraped back. "Dad, thank God. What is happening? Why can't I access anything?" I set my coffee down and took my seat. "Sit down," I said. "I don't want to sit down. I want to know why you've locked me out of everything without a single word of explanation. Sit down." He sat. I pulled a folder from my desk and slid the first document across to him. "That's a summary of every unauthorized personal charge run through this company over the past 3 years. I gave him a moment to look at it. He went pale somewhere around the second page. "Dad, I can explain those." I pulled out the second document. "That's a record of the company card transaction from 14 days before your party. Specifically, the $5,000 check drawn on the business account and made out to cash the week you were planning Dennis's birthday surprise." His mouth opened. "You used my business to fund a gift for your father-in-law," I said. "Well, you gave me a clearance shelf coffee mug with the price tag still on it." The silence in that office was the kind that fills up all the space in a room. "I had a valuation completed," I continued. "Your 35% stake in this company is worth approximately $630,000. I'm offering you $400,000. That's a fair number that accounts for years of treating this company like your personal expense account." He stared at me. "Dad, you can't be serious. This company is our future. You told me that. You said we were building something together. We were. Until I understood what together meant to you." His eyes went red at the edges. "I made a mistake, Dad. The gift was terrible. I know that now. I got caught up trying to impress Dennis, and Jennifer wanted something big, and I lost sight of what actually mattered. I know how bad it looks, but you can't burn everything down over a birthday present." "This isn't about a birthday present," I said. "That was just the day I stopped pretending. This is about 11 years of being the person who shows up for everything and gets treated like a line item on a budget. This is about $355,000 and the understanding that none of it purchased a single moment of genuine consideration." He broke then, not manipulation, not strategy. He put his face in his hands and cried in a way I hadn't seen since Linda's funeral. "I'm sorry, Dad. I am so sorry. I didn't see it. I didn't let myself see it, because it was easier not to. I know. Please don't do this. Please, give me a chance to make it right." I looked at my son across that desk, the boy I'd raised and protected and poured my entire life into. And I felt sorrow and love and resolve all at once. The complicated math of being a father. "The decision is made," I said quietly. "Paul will run the company. Gerald has the paperwork. You'll receive the buyout within 30 days. That's the end of that conversation. What about your will?" His voice had dropped to something barely above a whisper. "You'll receive exactly what you decided your father-in-law was worth to you." He thought about that. $5,000. $5,000. He stood. His hands were shaking slightly. Dad, that's almost $3 million you're talking about. It's 2.4, I said. And yes, after everything we've been through, after Mom, after everything you said about family and legacy, after everything I gave you and everything you decided I was worth, yes. Those two things have to mean something, both of them. He didn't storm out. He just walked to the door and stopped with his hand on the frame. He didn't turn around when he said, "I hope you can live with this." "I can," I said. "For the first time in a long time, I actually can." He left. Paul passed him in the hallway without a word. I took Lily to lunch that Friday the way I did most Fridays. Burgers at the place on Bigger Road that had the old pinball machines in the back. She knew something had happened. Kids always know. "Are you and Dad fighting?" she asked over her lemonade. "We're going through something hard," I told her, "but it's nothing you caused and nothing you need to fix." She picked at her fries. "Is it about the birthday party? About the mug?" "Partly," I said. She nodded in that serious way she had. "Dad was wrong to do that, Grandpa. Even I knew it was wrong, and I'm 12. You're very perceptive." She looked at me with Linda's eyes. "You deserve better than a clearance mug, Grandpa. You're the best person I know." I don't say this lightly. That sentence from a 12-year-old in a burger place in Dayton, Ohio, meant more to me than anything I could have been given. It reminded me why I'd done all of it. Not revenge, not anger, just the simple, non-negotiable truth that every person, even a father, is allowed to require that they be treated like they matter. 6 weeks after the birthday party, my daughter-in-law called and asked if we could meet. She chose the Panera on Miamisburg Centerville Road. She arrived, looking like she'd been carrying something heavy for a while. "Harold," she said, "I owe you an apology that I should have made before any of this happened." I let her talk. The mower, the check, all of it had been her idea as much as my son's. Her father had spent the last 2 years making comments about the men her friends had married, how successful they were, how established. She'd pushed my son to make a statement, to show Dennis that they'd made it, that they were serious people. She'd been so focused on impressing her father that she hadn't once thought about what it meant to disregard mine. "I pushed him," she said. "He made the choice, but I pushed. And I'm so sorry." Her apology was genuine. I accepted it. I told her I held no permanent grudge against her, that what mattered now was how they both moved forward. She cried quietly into her coffee. Then she asked about the will. "Lily gets the trust," I said. "She's innocent in all of this, and she's the only one who's made me feel valued without ever needing something in return." My daughter-in-law wiped her eyes and nodded. She didn't argue. That told me something. 3 weeks after that, Dennis Albright called me on a Tuesday evening. I hadn't expected to hear from him. We'd exchanged polite conversation at family gatherings over the years, nothing more. He said he needed to say something and asked if I had a few minutes. He told me he hadn't known about any of it, not the source of the check, not the company card, not the mug I'd received. His daughter had told him after everything unraveled, and he said he'd felt sick. He was a father himself. He had daughters. He said if any of their husbands had treated him the way my son had treated me, he would have done exactly what I had done. "I want to return the money," he said. "All of it. To you or to my daughter and your son, whichever makes more sense. I didn't earn it, and I shouldn't have it." I told him to give it to my daughter-in-law directly, that it might help them stabilize things. He said he would, and I believed him, and I found that I didn't have the energy to be angry at a man who'd called me up to do the right thing. November came with early frost, and with it a phone call from Lily that I never expected. She'd called from her mother's phone, which meant things had gotten bad enough that she'd reached for it without asking permission. "Grandpa," she said, her voice tight, "Mom and Dad are fighting every night. Dad says they might lose the house. He says it's your fault for being cruel. Can you please help?" It broke my heart to hear her voice like that. Completely. But I told her what I had to tell her. "Lily, your parents' problems belong to your parents. You are not responsible for fixing them. This is not your weight to carry. But you could help," she said. "You have the money. You could just give Dad back the company, and everything would be fine. I sat with that for a long moment. If I did that, sweetheart, your dad wouldn't learn the thing he needs to learn. And the kindest thing I can do for someone I love is let them learn it, even when it's painful. She was quiet. Then she said, "Okay, Grandpa, I trust you." That was the hardest two-word sentence I'd ever heard. I called my daughter-in-law the next morning. I told her I would cover 3 months of mortgage payments, $9,000. A one-time measure for Lily's stability, not as an opening toward reconciliation and not as a signal that anything had changed. I transferred the money that afternoon with a letter that said exactly that in plain language. My son called me that evening for the first time since the confrontation at the shop. His voice was rough and stripped down to something honest. "Dad, Jennifer told me what you did." "It's for Lily," I said. "Don't confuse it with anything else." "I know, I'm not." He was quiet for a moment. "I want to talk. Really talk. Not to get anything back. Just to talk. When you're ready to apologize without expecting it to undo the consequences, you'll know how to reach me." "I'm almost there," he said. "I'm not quite there yet, but I'm almost there." That was an honest answer. Maybe the most honest thing he'd said to me in years. I hung up and I sat for a long time with Linda's photograph on the shelf in front of me. "You were always the tougher one between us," I told her. I finally caught up. December arrived. My birthday came and went quietly, celebrated with Paul and his family, with Lily, and with a handful of old friends who'd known me since the early days of the company. My son sent a card. A real one, the kind you have to actually look for in the store. Inside, he'd written in his own handwriting, "Dad, I understand now why you did what you did. I don't like it, but I understand it. I'm working on being better. I love you." I put it on the mantel next to Linda's photo. Christmas Eve, Lily asked if her parents could come. She asked with the specific, careful hope of a child who has learned that hope doesn't always land the way you intend. "Please, Grandpa, just for one night. Even if it's weird." I thought about Linda, who had believed with every part of herself that family was the thing worth fighting for. Not the people who hurt you, but the possibility that people could grow. I thought about the 12-year-old sitting across the table from me who had, without a single word of self-interest, sat beside me at a party where everyone else had forgotten I existed. "Okay," I said, "one dinner." "But Lily, this doesn't fix anything, you understand that." "I know," she said. "I just want us to be in the same room." They came at 6. My son and my daughter-in-law stood on my front porch with Lily and a small wrapped gift. Inside was a framed photograph, the two of us from a Sunday afternoon at Eastwood Lake, both of us laughing at something I couldn't remember anymore. On the back, my son had written in black marker, "This is what I should have been celebrating all along." We ate dinner carefully, avoiding the deep water, talking about Lily's school play and the weather and the bowl games coming up. My son was quiet for most of the meal. He helped clear the table without being asked, which was something. After dinner, while Lily was in the living room, he asked if we could step outside for a few minutes. We stood on the back porch where Linda's rose bushes were cut back for the winter, and the yard was silver with frost. He didn't make a speech. He said, "Dad, I've started talking to someone, a therapist. I'm trying to understand how I became someone who could do what I did. I don't have all the answers yet, but I know this much. I treated you like you'd always be there, no matter what I did to you, like your love was something I could spend without ever replenishing. That was wrong. That was cruel, and I am genuinely sorry, not because of the will or the company or any of it, because you're my father and you deserved better." I looked at my son standing in the cold in Linda's backyard, and I felt the full weight of 11 years, the good parts and the failed parts and everything in between. "That's what I've been waiting for," I said. "Not an apology that undoes anything, just one that's true." We didn't embrace. We stood there for a moment in the winter dark. Two men who had a long way still to go, but who were, for the first time in a long time, standing in the same honest place. That was enough for that night. It is now the following summer. I'm writing this from the porch of my house on Ridgeway Road, watching the roses Linda planted come back the way they do, every year, reliable and unhurried. Paul runs Mercer Plumbing and HVAC with a steadiness that makes me proud. The business has grown. 2 new trucks on the road this spring. My son works for a construction management firm in Miamisburg, earning his own way, living inside his actual means. Willie and I have lunch on Fridays. She's 13 now and funnier every week. My son and I talk on the phone. Not often, but honestly. He knows I won't be rescuing him. I know he's trying. It is not the relationship I once imagined. But it is a real one, which is something it hadn't been in a very long time. That $12 mug sits on my desk. I kept it, not as a wound to press on, as a marker. The exact moment I stopped accepting what I had settled for and decided that being a father does not require being invisible. If you're watching this and someone in your life has been treating your love like it costs nothing, hear me clearly. It costs everything, and you are allowed to say so. Setting that boundary is not cruelty. It is the only honest thing left to do. My name is Harold Mercer. I'm 64 years old, and I am nobody's afterthought anymore. If this story reached you somewhere real, please subscribe to Father Still Revenge and hit that notification bell. We post true stories like this every single day. Leave a like if this meant something to you, and tell me in the comments where in America you're watching from. I love hearing from every corner of this country. Your support is what keeps these stories alive.